Public Affairs very much thanks Residco, our sole corporate underwriter, for helping to make the production of this show possible.
If you were elected and this comes before you, you and your 6 colleagues will have the ability to take a different path.
If the legislature decides to, take a shot at pension reform again, then it would definitely be challenged, and certainly would come before us. And we are not bound by that. I mean, we're, bound, by the doctrine of stare decisis, but we're, again, we can always stray from that. We talked about it with the Dobbs decision. Dobbs strayed from stare decisis in Roe. And in the Dobbs decision, they outlined a number of different cases where, the U.S. Supreme Court, in Brown versus the Board of Education, strayed from Plessy v. Ferguson. So, I mean, there's, a number of, there are reasons to stray from stare decisis.
I'd show you and show the viewers is slide 4. It's a summary of where we are factually of our pensions in the state of Illinois, public sector pensions, that the state pension whole for both state pensions, which majority of the whole, but also Chicago and Cook County and other places outside Chicago, other local areas outside Chicago and Cook County, $530 billion. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. $530 billion with a B, not with an M, okay? We give people perspective, our annual budget in the state of Illinois is about $45 billion, the whole thing, budget. 530, 10, 12 times that. Mm-hmm. These are liabilities that the state has that they don't have funded in large part to pay for, right? Mm-hmm. This has come before the court 7 years ago, right?
Right. Not
this particular issue, but a similar view. There's a problem. And the state said, we want, well, you tell me, there is a constitutional provision, right?
Right.
What's that constitutional provision? How does that relate?
It says that this is a contractual, that public sector pensions are contractual obligations, and the benefits of those public sector pensions cannot be abridged or diminished. And that was put into the 1970 Constitution. It was voted on by the public. And the public voted for that provision.
In 1970?
1970.
Cannot be diminished.
And that's what the provision says.
But if they were asked in 7 years ago when it came up by the Attorney General representing the state of Illinois, the people, mm-hmm. They said, there's an emergency here. We have police powers during an emergency. Yes, that provision is there, but we asked the court to say, you can't follow that provision because there's an emergency and we have to deal with this at that time it might have been a $400 billion hole. Still pretty big. Right. Okay?
Right.
What did the court say to that?
The court said you have to follow the Constitution. There's nothing that allows the legislature of the state of Illinois to willfully disregard a constitutional provision, emergency or no emergency. And the case was in rate pension litigation, 2015, I believe it was. And in that case, Justice Carmeier wrote that this was he laid out the framework of how, the legislature, in some respects, created this pension deficit by not funding the pensions to the amount that they should have been funded, or actually were required to be funded by statute. And also, he pointed out a case from the Depression, the Great Depression, when the city of Chicago had no money and they decided not to pay their judges. And that was a violation of a constitutional provision at the time, that judges' salaries couldn't be diminished during their terms of office. They had no money to pay, and they made the same argument. And the Supreme Court at that time said the Constitution prevails. the legislature has to follow the Constitution of the state of Illinois. Again, that's what that case, the in re pension litigation case says.
Yes, but if we were to look at another slide, say slide 7, the first slide came from Wirepoints, so does this one. Pension benefits of career city workers. These are city workers. Could be with state workers, be something comparable. Mm-hmm. But we can see the average current pension for firefighters is $97,000 a year before they get their COLA. The average for police is $81,000. If you're elected and sitting, because this could come up again, but a large number, maybe 5 of the 7, right, new. Right. So you have a different composition and different decision-making. There's stare decisis. But if it's in the record, now you're starting to talk policy and say, well, was it the pension holidays? Was it that it wasn't sufficiently funded? Or was it with salaries like this and pensions like this? And this would have been comparable to what we had 7 years ago. Couldn't really fund those things unless I don't think people can think of taxes high enough. And I don't know if they argued this, but if it was in the record that they said, well, under the law and under the Constitution, the state of Illinois can terminate employees. They can do it for cause. They can do it because of budgetary reasons. May have to be within the collective bargaining agreement. So you're saying to me, Your Honor, collectively, the 7 justices, you're saying to me, we can't cut pension benefits, but we can terminate people. Do I have that right?
Right. Right. I mean, that's.
And if you were answering me, which you may not be doing, you'd have to say, yes, you have that right.
I'm under that decision. The last decision that's been published and is out there, you cannot diminish those pension benefits.
But again, if you were elected and this comes before you, you and your 6 colleagues will have the ability to take a different path.
If the legislature decides to, take a shot at pension reform again, then it would definitely be challenged. And certainly would come before us, and we are not bound by that. I mean, we're, bound, by the doctrine of stare decisis, but we're, again, we can always stray from that. We talked about it with the Dobbs decision. Dobbs strayed from stare decisis in Roe, and in the Dobbs decision, they outlined a number of different cases where, the U.S. Supreme Court, in Brown versus the Board of Education, strayed from Plessy v. Ferguson. So, I mean, there's a number of there are reasons to stray from stare decisis. But I'm just telling you that decision that was reached, again, a unanimous decision, 7-0, that the pension clause says what it means and means what it says.
But if we look at slide 5, the last slide of the show that we'll look at from Wirepoints, that says the average pension debt per household is $110,000 per household across the state of Illinois. And I may say, if I were arguing this to the court, I would say, does this give you reason to stray from stare decisis? Maybe it wasn't asked of you to consider this. This is new, perhaps. This is in the record. Mm-hmm. And 110, do we think we can ask our average taxpayer to come up with $110,000 to pay for these pensions when they're going to have people who commonly have Social Security is all they have, no defined benefit pension? They're going to have $18,000 from Social Security. You want me to cover these $80,000 to $90,000? They could ask you that, right?
Sure, they could. And maybe the Attorney General will hire you to make that argument for them.
Well, I'm trying to, I should be balanced as a journalist, but this is the best argument they could make. And I'm sort of putting myself in that position. Right. You're putting yourself in the position of giving an accurate exposition of what happened 7 years ago and an accurate exposition of what you would have to do and consider as a justice if you were there.
Right.
Kind of different roles.
Right.
I was sort of putting myself in the state's role.
Right.
I mean, but I think, so as we sum this up, as people reflect on what they've heard from you. Part one, what they'll see is part one and part two of these shows with Justice Michael Burke, who's had as we said, long career, and now is running to continue to be on the on the Illinois Supreme Court from the 3rd District.
Right.
From Kankakee and DePage and Grundy and Iroquois and LaSalle and Bureau and Will. Those are the voters who will decide between you and your opponent, right?
Right.
And they will decide, is this person fair? Is he just? Will he do justice? Will he, in a sense, it's kind of divided. I was going to say, will you represent the 3rd District? But when you're a justice, you're kind of representing the entire state of Illinois, aren't
Well, you are. I mean, we're elected from geographic districts.
Right.
But when you're on the court, you're hearing the cases. You're not representing the interest, as for instance, a legislator might represent the interests of a particular district in order to get more fire trucks or whatever the case may be. This is different. Once you're elected, you sit as a justice of the Illinois Supreme Court, and you hear all the cases from the statewide perspective.
Okay.
I don't rule on a case based upon, what's going on in my district. That's just not how it works.
You are trying to do justice for the roughly 12.7 million people who reside in the state of Illinois.
Correct.
Okay. So I leave anything out, Justice Burke?
No, I mean, we've talked about a number of issues, and those issues are all certainly important and the voters should consider. But I mean, ultimately, when we're talking about the Illinois Supreme Court and a seat on the Illinois Supreme Court, I mean, the decision is really one based upon experience. Who has the most experience, both on the trial side and the case law side, as well as the judicial administration side. And that's what I would ask the voters to look up my website, look up whatever information.
What
they
is
can
that
find.
website?
It's justicemikeburke.com. And then do the same with my opponent, and then decide, who deserves their vote.
Yeah, you're fair. You want the voters to be fair, and you want the Illinois Supreme Court to be the best it can be.
Right.
Okay. So you come back. We're early in this campaign.
Sure.
It's July 19th. Election's November 8th.
Right.
Hope you'll have you back, maybe perhaps your opponent, maybe the two of you together. Would you like that?
That'd be great.
Okay. So you come back, and you come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.